Hello, I'm Joseph Barker, and welcome to the Finding Ability Podcast. A place where people are able, adaptable, brave, loving, and exceptional. This is a place where we get into deep conversations about how we can make our lives better and how we can make the world a better place. Hello. This is Joseph William McKay Barker, and this is the first episode of the Finding Ability Podcast. Some of you probably know who I am already, but a lot of you probably won't. So this is a kind of introduction to myself and just setting the intentions for this podcast. I'm in the midst of recording the first season with various people who are within and around my kind of circle. And I thought that I'd do a couple of these solo casts specifically so that I can share my journey and to share the journeys of others, to come out of a mindset that we aren't able or we can't do, and to really move towards understanding that we all have ability, and that we can all be more abled in all ways. We can all be more adaptable, brave, loving, exceptional, and a lot of the time it's just the myths that we have about the world or ourselves that's getting in the way of really moving in towards more capacity and more ability. First up is I wanted to share my own story and specifically how it's related to breath. Now, when it comes into breath, a lot of people are maybe in the limited understanding of, hey, I breathe every single day. I'm totally connected to it. Or my breath's totally fine. And my experience is moving into more and more of awareness of breath is a lot of the time greatly a part of the journey of becoming a more whole and a more present human being. One of my teachers used to say the only time that most people are connected to their breath is when they're panting because they're working out really hard or they're having sex. And so my journey of healing and of growth and becoming more able and capable has really been tied to this idea of breath, and it actually goes all the way back to some early childhood stuff. And so to go there and to kind of hopefully help to bring some illumination as to how powerful our breath really is and how it can be used as a tool to really facilitate a lot of healing in ourselves and with others. When I was born, I was born with 1.5 arms. So my left arm's full. My right arm, I have the shoulder. I have the upper arm. I have an elbow. And then it kind of ends right there. I got a small little hand. That's actually a really great guitar pick or bass pick, depending upon what I'm playing. But it's about the size of a quarter or so. So I was born like this, and within a very short period of time, within the first couple years of my life, I developed this kind of croup cough, asthmatic thing. My parents didn't really know what it was, where it came from, and but they did know that there was times where I just couldn't breathe, which of course causes a lot of stress and anxiety. And so a lot of this happened previous to me really remembering anything. But one of my very earliest, very cohesive memories is having one of these attacks, not knowing what it was, and waking up in a hospital. And I'm going to kind of go into the story of what that was perceived by myself. I don't remember anything. Everything was completely black, and I was in a void space. Everything was this blissful kind of equanimity, this radiating love, as dense as water, and as expansive as every ocean. And I was in there for what seemed to be ever, or days, weeks. Time was outside of my capacity to be aware of it. It just was expansive everythingness. But then I became aware of something on the other side. And it was stress, and it was scared, and it was anxious, and it was frenetic. And so my witnessing mind, or my ability to move consciousness from one space to another, move from that blissful equanimity sea into the kitchen of my family's house. And I knew that it was nighttime. I knew that I was being held by my mother, and my father was kind of rushing to get us out the door. I then settled back into this equanimous state because it felt so good, and it seemed like even though my parents were stressed, they really didn't need my attention at that point in time. So the attention fell back into this this beautiful void space. And while spending time there, I was then given this image of a beautiful cartoon tree. So if you can imagine a pretty, atypical or stereotypical tree, it's a brown rectangle. It's like green kind of cloud, curly shape or bubbly shape. And it was on a hill, and the hill was green, and behind it was blue. And I was in this feeling of awe, and this tree came up, and it was the only image that I saw in that space. Everything else was just darkness. And I could still tell, some part of my mind knew that, we were, my human body and everything was kind of doing what it was supposed to. I then would always return my attention back whenever there was a nagging feeling to take it away, back to the tree. And eventually I knew that I had to come back to this space. I knew that it was going to take a little bit of effort to come back to the awareness of being in my body and with my parents. And the image of the tree then changed. And the best way that I can explain it is like, imagine watching a film reel of this cartoon tree. It's not changing, but I become aware that it's a film, and that it's kind of slowing down and getting choppy, kind of speeding up and slowing down, warping, and then it eventually starts to burn all the way up. And I'm presented with this blinding light. And then I'm in this hospital scene with my mother and my father, and in a space of comfort, and everything is okay. I think we were in this kind of like tent that had like lots of steam, and that was one of my earliest memories, by one of the most clear, one that I had forgotten about for quite a long time. And it wasn't until all of the esoteric symbolism, occult, Gnostic, exploration of the different pantheons and worldviews and maps of reality that it really came up, and then made sense contextually. You know, the tree of life is something that is seen in almost every culture, from Yggdrasil to the Kabbalistic tree of life, Avatar, not the Airbender, but James Cameron's Avatar. This tree of life is this kind of axis mundi, or this great connector, or a symbol of that. It connects the universes, it connects the worlds, internal and external. And then life just went back to normal, I guess. I don't really remember too much before that. And after that, I then was given an inhaler, which I used every so often. I was a relatively sickly kid, so every couple weeks, it seemed like I would have a day or two off from school. One of those sensitive kids, if you will. And from there, I kind of went through being like a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, and then moved into being in my early teens. And as everyone has probably experienced, that's an awkward and weird time. Our bodies are changing, and we don't usually like how they're changing. For myself, I already had a weird relation with my body. I loved life, and I, to whatever capacity I could, loved myself and my parents. But I always knew that I was different. I always knew that the world wasn't created for me. And with that world's not being created for me, I always had to be adaptable. And sometimes I just didn't have the energy to be adaptable, and sometimes I did. And then I didn't have any other real profound breath experiences until I believe I was about 12 or so, maybe 13. And it was this moment of being a chubby tween boy, and loving video games, and loving candy, and loving like butter on bread, which I feel like a lot of people can resonate with. It's a great time. And we're not really aware of like addiction brain and dopamine, and like how to actually eat well, and whatever. And so I was walking with my father and his best friend out in the country, where my father's friend lived and had and still has, I believe, a very beautiful property. I believe it's about 100 or so acres, 50 acres, here in southwestern Ontario. Huge forest, moraines, so these like tall cliffs that go down into these ravines and kind of swampy areas. And that was a big part of my growing up, was spending a Saturday or a Sunday for a couple hours, maybe once or twice or 3 times a month, going on these hikes and spending time in nature. And it was towards the end of one of these walks where my father's friend said, like, "Oh, you're getting a little bit chubby. You should suck in your belly." And so I remember, feeling that little bit of like that pang of shame, or, like I'm not pleasant to look at. I'm not like sexy. I'm actually just kind of like a little bit chubby and fat. And so I remember the distinct moment of like then sucking my belly in to appear thin, and then pretty much the immediate side effects of holding on to diaphragm and abdominal tissue, and then starting to breathe specifically into my lungs and into my rib cage, as opposed to taking more belly breaths, which is what we're supposed to do as humans. And so this really was a period in time in my life where my being born with my body the way that it is with asymmetry just as the default, and then starting to cut off my connection to my deep breathing. This was when a lot of issues really started to come up. Back pain, pretty much everywhere. It'd be low back one day, maybe upper back another day, and then maybe I can't move my neck or my head for a day or two because it's just so sore. Shoulder pain, hip pain, all of these things started to slowly creep into my existence, to creep into my fascial body, the soft tissue of my body, my muscles, my perception of my body. Then, went from this kind of youthful kid into being who was really excited about a lot of things, into being a lot more hesitant and a lot more neurologically kind of active. I had kind of cut off this connection between like my body and my brain because my body just, it wasn't that great. In a lot of ways it sucked. It felt pain. It was awkward. No matter what I did, I kind of just always felt awkward. And it really wasn't until I started to swim competitively that my body started to be able to open up, to stretch, and to feel comfortable. And as someone, as a practitioner of body work, and I have been doing that for about 7 years now, or a bit longer, our fascial system, as a side note, or our fascia, is this kind of saran wrap that holds everything together. So if you can imagine, we have dense tissue in our bodies, we have soft tissue. Our dense tissues that's our bones. They provide the kind of structure, or like the masts. If you want to think of like a sail, those bones are active spacers, and it's our fascial tissue and it's our muscles that then surround those to then give the masts this ability to move in some capacity. So this fascial system is an interconnected web that is like from just underneath our skin all the way down into like our bones. It surrounds every single muscle, surrounds every single muscle cell. It's what gravy's made out of. Like when you're rendering out meat, it's not fat that's kind of like, coming out. It's the fascial tissue. It's what holds us together, and it's what acts as a kind of wrapper, if you will, for our muscles and muscle groups, our organs, our nervous system. And so going back to how I was now developing as a kid is I wasn't breathing very well. I wasn't eating very well. My family and I weren't eating poorly for the most part. My mother made supper from like Monday to Thursday. My dad made supper Friday and Saturday. We'd order out, or we'd go to a restaurant on Fridays. And so I had a lot of home cooked food. But there was always snacks, and there was always food that wasn't really the most nourishing around. And so I got to this point where when I started to swim, where my body could be supported in the water, it was able to move more fluidly and more able to relax. My body started to respond very well to that. There's a beautiful book called The Blue Mind. I forget what the author is, but I can put that in the show notes. The Blue Mind is a book about this idea that we have two frames of mind, blue mind and red mind. Blue mind being feeling of joy, kind of elation, relaxed, open, pleasant, really. And then the other mind, or the red mind, angry, critical, stressed, unable to kind of function. And this book, and the idea within it is the idea that human beings have always lived close to water. We evolved kind of inseparable from it. And that there's a deep, deep, deep need for our body to be in it on a regular basis. This isn't like oh, it's pretty okay to like go in water and like you might feel a little bit better. It's more of like a fundamental kind of like hygiene. Our bodies love to be in water. They love to be supported by water. That's where we came from. When we were in our mother's wombs, we were in this space of equanimity and we were held in this fluid system. And so as I started to swim in my high school career, my body started um, to become more functional, to be better. I felt better. And in feeling better, the kind of jaded, crappy parts of being a teen like also kind of went away. Less anger being held towards peoples or things. I just felt better, and so because I felt better, my mind wasn't so aggressive or discerning or anxious or whatever it may have been. All of those negative emotions that we all feel, no matter what time in our life we're at. And so I continued this journey of swimming because it really felt like this beautiful thing that was supporting me. It was making me healthier on like a daily basis. And that continued to this precipice of me finishing high school and thinking, what is it that I need to do as an extracurricular, because those provide me so much joy in my life. Do I continue playing rugby or do I continue swimming? So at this time, I had been playing rugby for about 4 years, and it was one of my favorite things to do. The friends that I made there, some of them are lifelong. One of my friends within that actually now works with Rugby Canada and has for, I believe, about 7 years now. So do I decide between rugby or swimming? And it was a pretty easy answer once I kind of cleared my mind and sat down with it. If I continue swimming, it means that I will continue to feel better, continue to spend time in water, which I love, and be a part of that community, which is a different one from rugby, which is a team sport. Swimming's a team sport in training, but not in competition. And what I saw with rugby was I could continue to train for 8 or so months of the year, 9 months of the year, and then kind of destroy my body for the months that we actually have to play. And I had already these chronic conditions of knee pain, really tight hips, shin splints, almost chronic back pain. And so the idea was like, well, of course I'm going to pick swimming. That way I can actually continue to get better. And what's not wrong with that? To dedicate yourself to a practice that just makes you feel better every day. And so I then continued this journey of swimming, and within a couple of years, to my kind of astonishment, I came to a place on being at the Olympic and Paralympic trials for the Olympics, the Paralympics for Beijing. Something that was always in my mind maybe, but it was never at the forefront of it. Like, I'm working towards this goal. This is who I am and what I need to be successful. I just really enjoyed the practice of kind of serving myself and getting better. Because I could tell as I felt better, I could be a better person to myself and also to others. And within trials, I was lucky enough to make the time that was necessary for me to be on the Canadian Paralympic team, which is a whole journey that I'll probably talk about at some other point in time. But then my life became swimming. And one of my favorite parts of training was actually this thing called hypoxic training, which is referring to hypoxia, which is training but you're oxygen deprived. And for a lot of people, that probably instantly sounds scary, uh, rightly so. As CO2 increases in our body, as we hold our breath, the immediate response is the fear response. Not just the immediate one, but it is the response. Is our body is afraid. It wants to get rid of this CO2, because that's our warning system when it comes into to breathing. It's not that our body needs oxygen; it's that our body doesn't want to handle high levels of CO2. And so in training with the London, Ontario team, quite often we would do what's called hypoxia sets, which is breathing less and less as we kind of go through sets. And I just remember it was my favorite because I would feel so clear-minded, even more connected to my body. And I felt the time and the effort put into those workouts was better than putting time towards other workouts. There was more of a return of investment. I felt healthier the following days and in the present moment after doing those sets. For a little history on where it comes from, it was it's been around forever, but it was in like Western culture or modernity. It was brought up in, I believe, the 1980s within the Russian team, and that was when they were crushing everything. And it became a huge part of how they trained, which was hypoxic training, so that they were exerting themselves to their max capacity, but with low amounts of oxygen. And because Russia did so well, it then spread to other countries. It is relatively uncomfortable, though. And so the kind of competing narrative is that it doesn't actually make you better. It's too hard. And so it kind of became a thing for a little while across the world in different trainings, but then it kind of fell away again. And swimming is one of the only training systems that I know that maintained it, because they just knew that it actually did work and was really great. So at this point, my body's feeling better than ever, but there's still a lot of nagging issues. I'm tight most places, kind of everywhere. The kind of issues of like shin splints and spastic calves, tight hips, spinal pain was a lot better. My knee pain was a lot better. My body didn't feel great. It just felt consistently exhausted. And even though I could actually go through training sessions, it was always just difficult. And rightly so. I mean, I do have 1.5 arms, and the training that we did was hard. London, Ontario has one of the best teams in the world. We've had many Olympians, many Paralympians, and it's a club that's dedicated to success. And that then means that it actually is engaging, challenging. And so after about 3 years or so of training, I eventually went to my first yoga class. And if you haven't done a yoga class, it's something that I recommend to everybody. Do it at least once. Don't like it, whatever. You do like it, awesome. It's kind of meh. I find that yoga is something that everyone can do, and that in the practice of, you're always going to be getting something out of it, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual. A lot of people come to it for the physical benefits of, like, it's a great workout, it's a great way to increase mobility and strength, it's a great way to increase posture, to just feel good. It's a system that's been created to just make us more functional. And I know a lot of people who have said, like, it's more effective than physio, it's more effective than massage therapy, and in a lot of capacity, I believe that that's true. I think it's important that we move our bodies, and that we we do the physical hygiene that's necessary to keep our bodies in a space that's healthy and vibrant and balanced. And spending like all of our time sitting down at desks or on a couch, in cars, and then maybe working out really hard for a couple hours a week. It really isn't what I think that we're supposed to do as human beings. I think that moving through these natural postures and movements on a daily-ish basis is what we're designed to. And that if you do that, then most of these kinds of nagging physical symptoms that we feel just kind of leave because we're in correspondence with our bodies. So I go into my first yoga class. I'm, at this point in time, not on Team Canada, but I'm one of the best swimmers in my event in Canada and in kind of the Americas, like the western part of the world, if you will. So I'm in relatively good shape. And I'm not expecting that I'm going to kick ass, but there was a certain level of like, how hard could it actually be? And this was a hot yoga class. So by the time we got to the Warrior series, if you don't know what yoga is, it's like a lot of lunging in different positions. And because it was hot, like over 100 degrees, there was a moment where my brain literally said, "You're dying." My body's shaking. It's so hot. I'm sweating so much. I'm just like oozing out chlorine that's been inserted into my body. I've just been bathing in like toxins and pee and all of the shit that's in a pool for years. And it's just coming out of me and I feel like I'm going to die. And because I had the kind of athletic awareness, it's like, okay, you're not actually going to die. Come back to your breath. And so I did. And then the class became enjoyable. All I have to do is inhale and exhale and put my body in these shapes that they're asking me to. And when that class finished, and I'm in corpse pose at the end, and driving home, and then in my shower, and then in bed, the only thing that kept coming to mind was, oh my God, you can breathe. Oh my God, you can breathe. Oh my God, I can breathe. I'm breathing. And that lasted. That lasted until the next morning when I had to wake up at 4:30 to be at the pool for the morning training session. And I remember as soon as I got into the pool, my stroke's longer. I don't feel so tight. I don't feel like my core is trying to contract my arms into it. I can dolphin kick better. I can hold my breath a bit longer, and there's more space in my body. What the fuck is this? And why haven't I done this before? And why doesn't everybody do this? All of these questions that I feel like a lot of people come into when they really start to move down their path of awareness and healing. And so I continued to do yoga as much as I could during the training schedule that I was on, which was it was 6 days a week. And some days we had doubles, and some days we had long sessions, like 2 hours or 3 hours. And my body kept on getting better. Still sore because of training, but there was more space. And as there was more space in my body, There was more space in my mind and my emotions. Um, and so I then continued to do swimming and yoga over the course of that swimming career. And by the time I quit swimming, it was then time for me to really understand who I was as a person, and just see where to go. I know that this is true with other athletes, maybe people who finish university, or they come to the first kind of mountain or kind of completion in their life. When I quit swimming, I didn't know what to do. I hadn't even really comprehended the idea that there was life past this machine that I was inside of. And I was inside of it for long enough for me to lose a lot of parts of myself. And I don't say that with judgment or like it was bad. Those were all active choices. I could hang out with friends on a Friday night, or I could stay at home and go to morning training at 7 or at 5:30 in the morning on Saturday. I could hang out with friends on Tuesdays or Thursdays or at some night, but for the most part, I needed that downtime so that I could do well in training the next day. And so coming out of this monastic existence of swimming, I then was presented the entire world to be my oyster. And I eventually came back to yoga as something that always helped me to connect with myself and to feel better. And that never has really changed. I tried to work in the alcohol beverage industry at a couple different wineries and had a lot of fun, but found it unrewarding in a deeper sense. I tried to work in a corporate setting, hoping that I'd quickly rise up the ranks and be someone who could live a normative life, have a house, eventually have a partner, maybe have a kid or two, and I had enough money to kind of support all of that. But what I realized within this corporate structure is this is exhausting. The amount of stress and anxiety and sociopathic kind of tendencies to keep the machine alive, but to just not have the ability to have any kind of empathy or compassion or anything for the people who are a part of it. And it eventually just had me in a space of, I was doing yoga for anywhere between an hour to 2 or 3 a day to bring me to a space of feeling good, feeling present and mindful, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all those things. And it was after my second yoga training, which was a shamanic yoga training. It was then when I quit that job and that kind of phase of life, and I just trusted that everything was going to be okay. And that led me to then teaching yoga full time. It's how a lot of people know me, is through teaching so much at a couple beautiful studios in London, Ontario. And I had hit a kind of crest of a wave. I had enough time for me to be social with friends. I had enough time to have my personal time, and I had the time to do something that I legitimately loved and was passionate about and curious about. And that then led me into being able to take different trainings and to expand my understanding, not just in what yoga is, but therapeutic understandings of humans and our bodies. It led me to energy therapies. It led me to Thai yoga massage, to structural integration. And it led me into just having a deeper embodied understanding of what it means to have a fucking body. And that's something that I feel a lot of people don't have a good connection with. Well, my body's fine. My body works. I breathe every day, whatever. Like, but have you spent time to curate your relationship with your body and to really understand what's going on? A kind of analogy that comes to mind is, there's some people who love cars so much they become mechanics. Some people love cars so much they become designers or engineers. The love of that thing drives work towards understanding it and working with it. And I had that with the human body and anatomy. And so in the first week of my structural integration training, which is a fascial-based therapeutic modality, which sounds like a lot maybe. What the fuck does that mean, Joseph? Structural integration is like something along the lines of a massage therapist or a chiropractor or an acupuncturist or a Reiki practitioner. It's a therapeutic modality. It's a style, if you will. And the way that it looks at the world and looks at the body is fascia covers everything. And if you can open up that fascia and you can help create proper neurological connection and movements, then all of a sudden this body will come into its fullness and a more homeostatic place. So if someone feels tight and compressed and they don't have a lot of mobility and they're slouchy and stretching is hard, structural integration is one of the best things for you because it's not tackling your muscles, it's tackling everything. And so it helps to open everything up so that your bones, so that your body can move as it was designed to. And so in my first session of receiving this work in this training, we work on rib cage and diaphragm and shoulder girdle. The reason is because we need to breathe. Slouching all the time stops us from breathing into our belly, makes us chest breathers and makes us shallow breathers. So we need to open up the front part of our body, our diaphragm, to create space that our ribs can actually inhale and expand and soften and contract. Creating space here gave me this profound moment, similar to when I was coming out of my first yoga class. It was along the lines of, I can breathe. I can breathe without restriction. I can breathe and it's effortless and it's easy. And this isn't like an intellectual idea like, oh, I'm pretty sure that I can breathe better. No, this was, holy fuck, I am legitimately breathing better. And in every single session of structural integration, there's always some work along that area of the body to help promote better breath. And with every single session that I had over 10 months, I could breathe easier and better, and my body felt more and more light and expansive, more able, capable. And I have this challenge at times because I know friends and family and potential clientele, you know, when I recommend, hey, have you ever tried a breath practice? Almost one of the first things that always comes up is some kind of fear-based response. Oh, I can't breathe. I have fill in the blank. Or, no, I breathe and it's fine, which is this kind of deferral from, exploring why might someone recommend that. This happened to me recently. One of my friends said that they can't because of like one of their medical conditions, and it's a medical condition that would be assisted by them actually engaging in some kind of regular breath practice. But asking someone to have a regular breath practice or to just try it out once means that they have to put down their phone for, 10 minutes to an hour. It means that they can't reside in their brain. It means that they actually have to connect with themselves. And sometimes that's really hard. The amount of built up emotions we have, or the amount of thoughts in our mind cluttering the present moment, those things are so much that it's hard to even comprehend laying down for 10 minutes or an hour. And so my experience with structural integration was this great untangling, this great expansive period in my life in which I now feel so much more embodied. I can literally feel everything and it works. There's like almost no pain or no more issues. My knee's a bit clicky. My body doesn't like to do back bends too much, but it was this new level of connection and capacity. And from there, I then started to work with clients. And to see this happen again and again and again and again. People coming into me, feeling like these deflated and congested beings. And within 5 to 15 minutes, these epiphanies of, holy shit, like I can breathe, or holy crap, my rib cage can move like that. What's a diaphragm? And then all of a sudden, oh my God, what the fuck are you what are you doing? And the evolution that people have once they have that connection to their breath, once their body feels safe enough to breathe into, I think a lot of things change within people. They're able to be more present and capable. For people who have a meditation practice, it helps to settle even deeper into that kind of present, down-regulated state. For people who don't know what the fuck any of that shit means, it means that you can start to be more aware of yourself so that when you are getting stressed or tense or tight, you have more of the awareness of, oh, I could just take a couple breaths and just chill a little bit. And the more that we're connected to our bodies, the more that we have that awareness of, oh, a little bit of tension, oh, a little bit of stress. Okay. Not, oh, a little bit of tension, oh, a little bit more tension, oh, a little bit more tension, and then project anger and negativity everywhere that you go. It's Okay, whatever. And so at this time in my life, I was seeing people literally transform into not being able to walk up and down stairs to being able to garden for 8 hours, to not be able to play with their grandchildren because they couldn't really do anything but just stand or sit on a chair, into being able to sit on the floor with their grandchildren and play with them. I saw people who came at some of the worst times in their life. Parents diagnosed with cancer or dead recently. And in those sessions, people having the understanding and the resolve that they have what they need to be okay and to live a good life. And so it was this transformative experience within myself of realizing that this stuff is magical and this stuff is important. And what I started to notice was within my own practice, everything shifted towards just doing, well, almost just doing breath practice and meditation. And I've probably said things like breath work or breath practice quite a few times, and so I'll talk about what that means, just to provide context. Breath practice or breath work is something that's existed pretty much in every single culture previous to the monotheistic religions, aka Christianity, Islam, Judaism. All of those cultures, those pre-monotheistic religions, so the pantheon, like the pantheogenic religions, aka like Greece, Roman, Scandinavian, and the shamanic cultures, which is pretty much like the proto-religious cultures. They all have these breath practices, whether it's in the Arctic or whether it's in Africa or whether it's in Australia or it's in Central South America or it's in India or China. If you look into any of those cultures and their writings on life, health, philosophy, so much of it is connected to breath. So much of it is connected to the idea that your breath is one of the most important things in your life. And it might be the most important thing. And so in yoga, we have what's called pranayama. Prana, loosely translated to breath or energy, and yama, control. These things include like alternate nostril breathing, square breathing, triangular breathing. Square breathing being inhale for 4 seconds, pause for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, pause for 4 seconds, inhale for 4 seconds, pause for 4 seconds. It's a 4-sided breath. Retentions and inhalations and exhalations are all the same length. Those are a staple in yoga. If you went to any class or teacher, you'd probably do some form of pranayama in the class, and you'll probably do a couple different kinds at different moments in the class. They all facilitate some different experience biologically. And so I delved deeper and deeper and deeper into these things because I noticed that if I was to do, say, 2 yoga classes, or 2 hours of asana, I would feel amazing. I'd feel connected to myself. I'd feel empowered. I'd feel refreshed, restored. And, there's a certain point in time where you can't really do that for 2 hours every single day to get the clarity of mind and body that you want. And in my exploration of that and my breath practices, I found shamanic breathing and Wim Hof breathing and holotropic breathing. All of these are relatively the same. They're all a part of the same family. They're all brothers or sisters of each other. Wim Hof breathing is probably the most famous right now. That's newer. Holotropic breath work was created by Stan Grof, who is a clinical psychologist who did thousands upon thousands of LSD studies with patients. When that came out, he then transferred over into holotropic breath practices because LSD became illegal. And it pretty much did the same thing. In the kind of excavation of self, the untangling of psychological and emotional and physical knots. And so I started to do the Wim Hof method, cold exposure, breath practice, and within 10 minutes, 15 minutes of breathing, exact same internal feeling state that I would get from an hour to 2 hours of yoga. And I feel like I could probably talk about those practices for hours, and in my life I definitely will. But those really help to reset the whole nervous system and to bring about a really deep feeling of embodied joy, pleasantness. There is a little bit of work that you have to do. You have to hold your breath for a period of time. You have to breathe quite a lot. But the more that you put into it, the more that you get out of it. And I find that if someone's in a triggered state, like depressed, anxious, angry, whatever it is, doing 2 or 3 rounds of that is very literally a lifesaver, I think, for the people who do it and for those around them. So many of my clients, when I haven't been able to see them for a session and they have these kind of underlying feelings and conditions, I'll recommend that they do a couple rounds, and like pretty much every single time those things go away. And so it's helping people to heal themselves as opposed to having to rely on somebody to get them there. If you don't know Wim Hof, there is a Vice documentary about him. I think it's about 45 minutes long. That's probably the best thing to look into. I had been following him since I think like the late 90s. Because I always had a kind of love for the cold and wasn't afraid to kind of expose myself to snow and cold water. And so I found it really nice to see someone also kind of have that same quirk. And so after about a year or two of that intense work, I'm still working with clients, taking them through 10 sessions of structural integration to completely transform their body, and to help heal my own self and to just really embody what this is. The Wim Hof method and the kind of brother and sister practices just became my main practice. There's an amazing book by James Nestor that came out in the last, I think, 2 months. And he talks all about this stuff, breath, the new science of a lost art. Really great read. One thing great about reading it is it felt like someone took um, about a decade of like my life experience and put it into a couple hundred pages and articulated it really well in written prose. And so from this moment, I then found free diving. I found the practices associated with that. If you don't know what free diving is, you can Google it pretty quickly, or which I think is really worth it because some of the images and the videos of free diving are just completely serene and beautiful and just full of awe. The free diving is human beings holding their breath and swimming underwater. Maybe it's straight down, as far down as you can go, and then back up on one breath. And a lot of people are going beyond 100 meters down and back up. Sometimes people go into a pool. They'll go underwater and back and forth, a couple lengths, 200 meters. And as a former professional athlete or swimmer, that was so interesting to myself. The fact that, there's like a new sport evolving that ties together my love of mindfulness and breath practice and swimming. And not swimming in this very aggressive way, as fast as you can, with as much exertion as you can. It was, how relaxed can you be? How calm can your nervous system be as you execute this thing? And so that's where my breath practice shifted towards. And it's awesome. I love it. I think everyone should just try it like at least once. Great for athletes who don't swim. You kind of build up your ability to withstand CO2. This is very much like hypoxic training. So how much CO2 can you have in your system to execute a certain physical exercise or endeavor? A lot of the kind of benefits are more red blood cells, better capacity to process oxygen, so you don't need to breathe as much after you do that kind of training, and your body can hold on to more, and you also have more blood. Your body also like dilates, norepinephrine's released, so you feel very clear of mind without having to, say, drink like a coffee and have a cigarette or something. And then I guess that leads me to here. If you're still listening, thank you so much. No one forced you to do this, unless you're my girlfriend. Just kidding. I wouldn't do that to her. But thank you for listening. It means a lot that someone or someones would actually listen to this much of my kind of ranting / solo talking. What does my breath practice look like now? Well, now it's an amalgamation of all of these things and just doing what I feel like is kind of necessary at that given moment, that time. I find in doing these breath practices more and more, it really helps to maintain longer and longer and longer periods of awareness and presence, being in the present moment. And so there's much more ability to remain in an equanimous state. And when there is some kind of triggering outside of that, it's easier to come back. And if I can't get back, there's also the trust that I will get there. And so if you're listening to this, we still might be in a pandemic. We still might be in lockdown and quarantine. That's where we're at, or that's where I'm at right now. That's where we're all at right now. I just started to see clients again, and I'm moving towards working with clients over 15 sessions to completely revamp their body, to revamp their breath, and to give them as many of the little tools that I've picked up along the way to really help them become their most abled self. And I'm really excited about that. I've dedicated like pretty much my entire adult life into understanding these things and to embodying them and integrating them into my own life. And as I do that, I'm then able to help others. The Buddhists call it, this is my Dharma. The Western magicians, Gnostics, whatever you want to call it my will. But it's the reason for my being in a lot of capacities, is to be able to assist people in this journey. And if you've listened this long, I hope you reach out or connect with me. Try out some of these things. If you haven't done yoga, try a class online or with someone who you know who teaches, or go to a studio if that's even possible at that time. Who knows? If you're interested in Wim Hof, cold exposure, the breath practices there. And to be clear, you don't need to go into ice cold water to do Wim Hof breathing. You just do Wim Hof breathing outside of the water on your own. And you can be wrapped up in a blanket, which is awesome. But yeah, I hope that that this serves you well. That you have a little bit of a better understanding of who I am as a person, and that you're supported in your own life's journey. Thank you so much, and be with your breath.